All right, it's Bible time. You can click away now if you don't want to hear about the Bible. You don't want to hear about what's going on in this world. This is a revisit to the political atmosphere that's going on in the world right now, in the country, in the United States right now. But I want to start with the Word of God. It's interesting, people hear the Word of God and run in the other direction. It's like, well, if something is true, you should accept it, even if you don't believe in God. Accept truth. Don't run away from things that are true. If you hear this label that makes you freak out, then you're only doing yourself a disservice. But first, subscribe. Subscribe. Click that button. If it's red for you on your YouTube channel, hit it and it'll turn gray or something. And then hit this notification bell and share this video. All right, let's start with the Word. This is from Ephesians chapter 6. I know the heading of this video is something. I haven't decided what the name of it is, but it has something to do with the presidential race in the United States. We all get fixated on the minutia. If you're a political junkie, if you're watching this, you're somewhat of a political junkie because you care about Artsakh and Azerbaijan and the governments that are battling over what's true and what's false, and that's essentially political. And so the biggest, these are small countries, Azerbaijan and Armenia comparatively, but it's a world stage, so all the players are important here. What did I just do? Oh. All right, let me just read. Finally, be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might. Put on the whole armor of God that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. That's not the part I wanted to focus on, but it's important to read context whenever, especially when you're reading the Bible. What the heck? Don't pull something out of context. So this is the Apostle Paul, who was born in Tarsus, Turkey, talking to the Ephesians, which is also in Turkey. So that's all relevant to this channel. But he's talking to the believers in Ephesus, and he's saying, be strong. There's plenty of opposition and persecution, especially when you're trying to stand for the truth. Put on the whole armor of God, a good metaphor. I won't read all the pieces of the armor, but it's a really good metaphor if you're not familiar with it, so you can read the rest of this chapter again. It's Ephesians chapter 6. Put on the whole armor of God that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. Here's the part I want to focus on. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood. Of course, there are bullets and bombs, tearing flesh and blood apart right now. But keep in mind, there's more going on here than just humans battling each other. We do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities. Okay, so at first, some Christians are saying, this is talking about angels and demons. But let's just take that as, at face value, rulers and authorities, all right? Governments, okay? There's governments. This is Aliyev and Pashinyan and Putin and Erdogan and whoever's the president of the United States and Macron. All right, so there are rulers and authorities that have evil intent. But he goes on to clarify, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. All right, so it's not Aliyev, it's not Erdogan or Putin or the president of the United States. People say you've got to prove corruption by pulling out the evidence. And there's just so much corruption going on in the world, and there are people with their ulterior motives and people thinking they are appointed by God to do this great thing. And some of that is true. And we should all believe that God is doing something in us and through us. But there are other forces at work as well. And to mistake those other forces for God is where we have the trouble, because there are cosmic powers over this present darkness. There are spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. And I'm reading out of the Bible, so obviously, you're just this spiritual guy. You believe in angels and demons and all that stuff. Of course I do. Yes, I do. And I believe that humans are not physical. We have bodies, but there's no such thing as a thought that you can carry in a cup or in a satchel. A thought is a thing that exists. An idea is a thing that exists without a body, without physical, material existence. And so we are fighting against thoughts and ideas that tend to permeate groups of humans, and they become the force that enacts the will, where these ideas originated from. I want to talk about this guy. This is just a Wikipedia page, Soghomon Tehlirian. And maybe I'm not being perfectly articulate in what I'm trying to say here, but Soghomon, who was famous for this event, and this is a headline from the New York Times from March 16th, 1921, one day after the act, Talat Pasha slain in Berlin suburb, Armenian student shoots former Turkish Grand Vizier held responsible for massacres. Assassin, that's Soghomon, under arrest. Morgenthau, the American ambassador to the Ottoman Empire, tells of Talat as Big Boss and blames him for atrocities. So it was like the day after this assassination. The truth is already out there. But in his trial, his defense attorney, I won't bring it up here, but his defense attorney references some research that was happening at the time. And the conclusion of these researchers, they were researching war and the result of World War I. And I'll paraphrase what they say, but in speaking, his defense attorney, in referencing this research and applying it to Soghomon Tehlirian and Talat Pasha, he says that these men may have felt like they were acting of their own accord, that they had free will. I don't think he uses that phrase, but the research indicates or suggests that there are other, and he didn't spiritualize this at all, that they're moved by greater forces. The will of the people or the will of the groups that they represent. Talat Pasha, and in a sense, it was an appeal to the jury to absolve Soghomon Tehlirian of responsibility, sole responsibility. He was acting out of, he was merely a representative of a greater cause, a greater movement. He was the point man to execute, pun intended, the will of a greater mass of people. Similarly, Talat Pasha, he submitted the orders. He's the one who signed off. He was the man in charge, the ultimate authority to order his minions to massacre the Armenians. And so he was moved by the group, the herd mentality, or there's something called mass hysteria. People believing something, and they feel because they're surrounded by others that believe the same thing that they're more motivated to act or move in a certain direction. So, what am I trying to say here? Subscribe and share. I fully believe that this will be one of my least viewed videos, but if I put the name Soghomon Tehlirian in the title, the views will go up, because Soghomon Tehlirian is researched over and over again. People search for that and find it. So every video I ever have that has Soghomon Tehlirian in the name is just gradually ticking up all the time. What I have to say here is the United States of America is going through something unprecedented. There was a concerted effort by international forces to override the will of the American people. And I heard one guy say, well, it happened before. Richard Nixon actually won the election against John F. Kennedy. But he conceded because it was the right thing to do. The data hadn't fully come in yet, something like that. And if you're a historian, you can research that. I'm just taking that guy's word for it. And he was saying that'll probably happen in this case, that Joe Biden will be sworn in as president of the United States. And I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure. I'll end with that. I was going to talk more into politics, but I went over into the spiritual thing, that the powers at work, we can fight against them. And that's what we should do.